comedy can easily not have any point or have a point.
Humor is like it's a very emotional thing.
I'm ultimately trying to entertain, but I do have a lot of like things I would prefer society to think.
Okay, that's a really interesting transition.
If it's fun to say, then you should say it.
Isn't it supposed to break down barriers? Isn't that kind of what humor is all about? What's up, guys? Today on Winning the Game of Life, we have a unique guest. He's a professional poker player, but he's also a writer and a comedian living in London. He's British Chinese, and he's also got his own show on BBC, and he's absolutely killing it. Please welcome Ken Chang. What's going on?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, it's exciting. I haven't really done a podcast based around poker before, so that's quite novel.
Oh, well, it can be kind of. It's partly based on poker, but it's based off of. I mean, poker's one theme. It's
Yes,
based off
sure.
of winning the game of life, being successful, but also like extending success beyond.
Right. Yes,
no, it's-
of course.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I guess what I meant was one connected to the poker community. Most of my things I get involved in are all comedy adjacent, and it's quite interesting to be in a different community for something.
So it sounds like you've done a lot of podcasts around comedy, or what?
Yeah. As a comedian, you kind of just agree to do podcasts here and there, like for other comedians, like which will usually have some sort of comedy gimmick, and then you just kind of do it. And it's quite fun because you'll hang out with comedians.
Oh, so like the comedians get together and they've got like a group supporting each other, like not like a formal group, but they're like that's like the what's you say, unofficial contract of sorts, and you also like do something fun with that, and you like work into collaborations that promote each other, or how does
Yeah,
that
that's
work?
about right. Yeah, I think it's quite a big community in the UK of kind of comedians across, like some are professional, some are kind of like semi-professional, that it's not their main job but they get a bit of income, and a lot just have their own podcast, and it kind of, you can obviously say no if anyone goes, hey, be on my podcast, but I'm quite chill about that, happy to do random podcasts.
All right, well, we're happy to have you. I know you went to the University of Cambridge,
Yep.
kind of a big deal. You dropped out to pursue comedy, right? Or was it poker?
Poker first, and then I transitioned into comedy after doing poker for a bit.
Okay, that's a really interesting transition. I would have imagined that poker would be the like easier thing to make a lot of money at, and then, well, in a sense, if you're already winning, like money's more consistent, I would think. But I don't know how it works. Like maybe it just seems to me like it'd be really hard to become a professional comedian.
Yeah, it takes a long time. It takes a lot of graft, and the things that you need to do. You have to work quite hard. You have to kind of do your own hustle. But yeah, I've always had poker to fall back on, so I've never been in that. I've never been like, oh, should I quit my day job because my day job is poker? So I can always be like, well, I can always not do it or go back to it when I'm running low on funds.
I guess if you, it's sort of poker's like the job in between the day job. It's not like the real job. It's like, oh, we've got a backup plan to the real dream. And there's like a, I
Yeah.
guess if you quit poker, or you could, then that's when you really have to get the real day job. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of doing something similar.
Oh yeah.
Except I don't really have a plan. I don't like clearly want to become a professional comedian. I've been trying to figure out that. But actually, you've intrigued me to comedy, reading a little bit about you and the kinds of things that you do, and yeah, and also it's been really entertaining. I watched a few of your videos, one
Oh,
on
cool.
Chinese boyfriend
All right.
during dating during the epidemic, and this two birds one stone thing, and
Oh yeah,
networking.
yep. Okay, you found them all, yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting how well it seems like you like. I'm trying to figure out what you're doing. I'm trying to figure out your game. it seems like a lot of time, a lot of what you do is you state like a lot of truths, but in a really funny way, and you make fun of like a lot of the stupid things that happen, basically. And that seems like one of the patterns of comedy that's going on in your skits, and I think a lot of comedians do that to a degree. Like some self deprecation also. I mean, you're doing a million things at once. It's like
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I think some of that was probably like things I've definitely been made part of my main style, or just seem to land on for bits. Like I think you over time definitely I've tried different things though, which is quite fun, and you can definitely experiment a lot in comedy because the audiences ultimately just want to see whatever, and you can kind
okay.
of just they don't follow you enough to be like, oh, that guy does that thing. You can actually just kind of roll with what you think is funny ultimately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not as I used to be quite mechanical when it came to writing comedy, but I think I've become less so now. And one of the big things I think the biggest motto I have when it comes to like writing new comedy is if it's fun to say, then you should say it, which is this thing that I think almost always works in terms of how it correlates to how well a joke does, because I kind of practice by I kind of come up with material by just talking to myself as if I was on stage for whatever thing I'm doing, and I just decide if something is fun to actually come out of your mouth, you can kind of imagine the audience going with it. Is basically the philosophy there.
Okay, that seems like a pretty easy way to deal with like a massive crowd. I would presume that would tend to be intimidating for most people. Like going up and well, that's the whole thing about stand-up comedies. It just sounds really intimidating to get up and talk to a bunch of people. But you're saying like, oh, I don't really care. You could just say, if it just sounds funny, just say it. And
Yeah, I guess I've done it for a long time now, and yeah, big crowds. The things I get nervous about are quite specific. I do occasionally get nervous, but if I've done the same bit of material a lot, then it's obviously like a tried and tested thing, and you're used to like things going badly. It's like poker, like there are downswings. There's
those
times you
sound swings.
run bad. Yeah, there's times where you're running bad or until like
That's
there's things out of your control. Like the audience could just be bad. Like the setup of the gig could just be bad, and you just have to go, okay, well, there's not much I can do except just make the best decisions, do the best performance.
oh, that is kind of funny. It makes a lot of sense. So well, let's okay, well, actually tell us a little. How do you become a professional comedian? Like, what's it sounds like you just do a lot of shows, but you have to work on your. Do you have to go to a drama school or whatever? There was is yeah. Tell me a bit. I don't really know
Yeah,
anything.
drama school is quite a specific thing in the UK. It costs it costs the same as like a degree, and it's for mainly actors. Really, comedians don't need to do it at all. Some have, but usually it's usually with actors they've gone to drama school and then realized that actually acting is way harder than comedy. They transition into comedy and do better in comedy, despite
Really?
having done all of that, because it's way more competitive in acting. There are a lot of actors, and
Huh.
with comedy you have your own brand. You're an individual with your own brand, and you kind of end up being your own kind of manager for a while until you get an agent in the UK, which is like a manager basically. And the agent, once you have an agent, your chance of like becoming a full professional are much higher. They're not 100% still, but like an agent will sign you if they think you'll make them money. Therefore they will try and get you a lot of things that will pay fees and stuff, and it might not be concrete. Like an agent might decide, oh, actually this person is not worth it, and drop you after a while. But once you've got an agent, they get you better gigs, they get you more jobs on TV and radio and all that kind of thing, and yeah, they just kind of push you. And once you've had an agent, there is a massive jump in legitimacy about you as a comedian. You're no longer this open micer slogging it, like doing like small gigs that no one's heard of. You're now someone for the industry as a whole to look out for.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it worked like that. So it's like the real goal. The first goal is just get an agent. Just get an agent
Yeah,
to think you're good enough.
yeah. Yeah, although nowadays it's not as concrete as that even, because loads of people just do their own thing online. There's actually only in the just past 5 years, a lot of people have created their own online content, and with Patreon and stuff like that, they can bypass the agent thing entirely. They don't need an agent at all. So it is changing a lot already.
Okay, I had no idea. But so how do you actually write your jokes? Do you just sit down with a piece of paper? I understand there's like some parts of it are kind of have a bit of a formula to it, and then you have to have the right timing, and
Yeah,
yeah.
I think I used to definitely just sit down, try and like write a lot of jokes. Now I walk around my flat speaking out loud. I just say stuff out loud until it eventually, like, I'll have an idea of what I want to talk about, a topic, I'll just try and speak it, and I'll keep saying the same kind of idea until it becomes like a joke rather than just me saying a thing.
Oh, okay. I sort of understand. Maybe one day it just hits you that wait a second, this saying two birds one stone. This is stupid. We just got to. It's just time to make fun of this.
Yeah,
Something like that.
yeah. That one I came up with like one joke, probably the last joke of it, and then kind of just kind of found other ways to tackle it, and I realized, oh, this is now a 7-minute set. Yeah, it really depends on what you're talking about. Like a lot of the same philosophies in stand up also like come out of improv. I think how people come up with improv ideas on stage and during an
Really?
improv show, you could apply to stand up completely. Because stand-up's quite loose, and it's meant to feel sort of like improv. It's weird, stand-up, because some people do believe you're just making up on the spot every time, which is bizarre, but it kind of semi-pretends to be that, and most people just kind of accept it semi-pretends to be that, sort of.
It's kind of, I guess it's like slightly, there's like little points that are a little bit scripted, but then it kind of flows between those points. A lot of things actually work like that. Really random comparison I'm thinking of is time. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Time.
Yeah, no, allegedly time works like that. Certain events in time appear to be inevitable in history, but I read decent amounts, so that just appears to be the case.
Right.
I've done a little bit of improv.
Yes.
I actually found it to help a lot with comedy skills and things like that.
Yeah.
I would do quite a bit more at some point. I probably will. Oh, that's interesting that stand up is similar to improv. And I know watching your shows, it felt like what you were saying really flowed a lot, and the delivery was very good. I was impressed.
Thanks. Yeah, I think my biggest tip to a lot of new comedians is don't do what I did when I started out, which is write it all down on a piece of paper and then try to kind of memorize it by reading off the paper and then kind of doing that process, because then all your jokes were funny on paper, really. They were funnier on paper, and then you had to and they lose something when you say them. So it's better now. What I do is I just say it, and then I commit to a paper once I have the delivery, everything. I might record it on a voice note instead. I might actually just try it out on stage completely fresh with kind of an idea of what I speak about, and not write it down before that, and then I'll voice note it. I record all my shows audio, so, and then I'll listen back and be like, okay, that sounds good. So because it's a spoken medium, it's not a written medium, so like this idea of like writing it on a Google Doc or whatever, or a notepad, is like, it loses a lot if that's where the joke starts.
Oh, okay, that's pretty interesting. Do you do public speaking as well?
Not really. In terms of like debating and like kind of speak. Yeah, what? No, we don't really have that public speaking culture in the UK as much.
Oh, okay. I've done a little bit of it. I found that when public speaking, it almost helped to get it like pretty close to whatever it was on paper, and just to like,
Yeah.
at least that was for me, but maybe it's because I've just started.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a little bit different in that like you're not trying to make jokes usually or too many
Yeah.
jokes. I mean, there's some
Yeah.
jokes, but yeah, I found I would like forget things a lot or on the spot, but maybe I just like need to get over that nervousness while being in front of a ton of people.
I think that was the thing I struggled most with, was remembering my set when I started out, especially if you wrote it down at one stage and you were kind of trying to read it into your memory, and then it gets, yeah. That's another good thing about, if you never write it down, actually your memory improves because it's something that you kind of drilled into your mind in a different way, I think.
Okay.
There's that thing about how before people wrote stuff down, people were able to do like oral histories of up to like 10,000 words and just memorize them because, yeah, something like that. Before writing existed, people would remember these really long histories and stories, which would have been like 1,000 pages long in writing, and they were just able to commit that to memory. And because we started writing things down, people stopped doing that.
Huh. I had no idea. Okay. That
Yeah.
sounds like a nightmare, frankly.
But that's how they like. That's how they did all stories before any writing. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to know what was there like a specific turning point when you got like your agent? Did
Oh yes. Yeah.
what was that?
Yeah, I did the competition. There are a lot of competitions in the UK which are new act competitions. So like for people who have been going for between like 1 and 5 years and haven't become like successful enough to be kind of well known or on TV and stuff. And these new act competitions, like there are a few of them out there every year, and they're like they're like a tournament basically. No, they're like a, what do you call it? A shootout. They're like shootouts basically, where it's like 10 people in a heat, and then one of those will go on to the semi-final, and then there'll be like 6 people in the semi-final, and a few of those will go on to the final, and one person will win in the final, and that person will be the winner. But everyone in the final will probably get quite a lot of attention because being in the final, having whittled it down from like 100 entrants or whatever, is pretty impressive. And I did one called the BBC New Comedy Award, which is an official BBC run one, which
Oh,
I would say
I
is
realize.
probably the most prestigious one because it's run by the BBC. The rest are run kind of by independent companies who are just like
Oh.
there to run these competitions. But the BBC one, that allows you to be that your set, yeah. So you do like 5 to 7 minutes. That's actually where the Two Birds One Stone video you saw probably what was from was my BBC final back in 2015. So I got to the final of that, and from there, agents will be at those finals, so they'll be looking for acts to sign. And yeah, it's really good for agents to like just go, okay, that person has a lot of potential, let's get them on our books for the future. And yeah, my agent found me then, signed me, and also I got my radio series off the back of that as well, because I met a lot of producers who were like, oh, we want to work with you, let's pitch a radio series to Radio 4. And so yeah, a lot of good things come out of these competitions, especially that one because it's the most prestigious one.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there were
Yeah.
like comedy competitions. I didn't know there was.
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
some? It reminds me a little bit of like battle rap or something. I don't know if
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
battle rap competition. I think I've seen it
No, we
actually,
don't.
something like that. Oh well.
We might have a few, yeah, here. I don't know that much about them, but yeah. And the thing about the UK, it's much smaller than the US. So actually, these competitions, the distance from like where like starting out to being on TV is much shorter here because it's just a smaller pool of comedians, and yeah, it's just a smaller distance.
Oh, that's good to know. Um, that does make quite a bit of sense. I mean, it sounds like you're like globally famous now, from my understanding.
I wouldn't say I was globally famous. I think that might be a perception of it, but actually, if you go through, like if I'm walking around in the streets, no one will recognize me. Like people won't stop me to recognize me. I've done cool things online and on TV, but like in general, people still don't really know who I am.
You mean in the UK they won't stop you?
No, no. I have a lot of friends who are comedians who have just got to that level where if I'm walking with them, someone
To
will
the
stop us and be like, "Oh, it's that guy," and they'll want their autograph or a picture. Yeah, so I'm actually not that far from there, but still, I'm not there yet.
I actually have a funny story about that. I've gotten stopped on the
Yeah,
street a couple times,
yeah,
but it's not super common.
yeah.
I had a guy during COVID. He would like,
Oh,
no joke. He I can't make this up, but he saw me and he was like running towards me like a normal person, and I was trying to like tell him, okay, just take my Instagram or something, and he like wouldn't let me leave.
man.
You reminded me. I was like kind of freaked out by this guy. I was like in the middle of London in St James Park, around St James Park.
Ah,
I was
that's
living in
fun.
London during lockdown, so yeah, I thought maybe he was on drugs or something. I would have thought that there were all sorts of guys, maybe girls, stalking you. Well, I don't know about stalking. I don't know what they do to the Chinese comedians in UK. Maybe you have some stalkers, or in if you went to China, perhaps, or I don't know.
Yeah, haven't had any harmful stalkers yet. I've had people who have been like, "Oh, okay, that message was weird on Insta or whatever," but no one harmful.
Okay, okay. I don't think I've gotten too many weird messages. I've gotten some.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think with comedians, it kind of opens up this idea because you're doing comedy, which is quite conversational. People kind of assume they have a relationship with you if they've seen your work, and they can just interact with you. Like a lot of people want to add to your joke or whatever online, and yeah, I think
huh.
there's something about comedy where people feel like they really know the person, probably because what I do as comedy and what other comedians do is quite personal, and it's like, oh, okay, we know each other now, is what the audience sometimes end up thinking.
Okay, I can see how that makes sense. I mean, humor is like it's a very emotional thing. It can
Yeah,
Isn't
yeah,
it supposed to break down barriers? Isn't that kind of what humor is
yeah,
all about? Breaks down
yeah,
social
totally.
barriers, and
It does.
you can talk about all sorts of. That's partly what interested me in it. Actually, is that
Yeah,
it's a good it's a very effective uh, means of social change, and like everyone can relate to it, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
I don't know if it looks like it's part of your goals to create some social change. Like you talk a lot about, or you put some issues of racism in your
yeah,
work. You
yeah.
talk a bit about, well, I saw your online dating one. I don't know if you were like, were you trying to mock it or trying to bring awareness to something, or just making fun of something that was ridiculous? Same with
I
networking,
think
really.
Yeah, I think a little of both. It's a fine balance because you don't want to be like purely message, right? You don't want to be purely. I want social change. I'm ultimately trying to entertain, but I do have a lot of like things I would prefer society to think, but I don't make it a major part of how I write. But I did at one point try to write like I did set as a challenge to write shows about these kind of harder topics and see if I can also do them in a still funny way. Um, I do think comedy can easily not have any point or have a point. I'm not one way or the other. I'm not one of these purists who go like, oh, it just has to be purely funny, and I'm not one of these purists who thinks, oh, something that's purely funny has no worth. But yeah, I think either way, I'm kind of fine with that, and I kind of float between the two. I wanted the networking one was a bit more silly, but I did make fun of like kind of corporate values, I guess, and how people behave in LinkedIn and corporate sphere, and I do find those people really worth like taking down in general, but also I just find that stuff funny. I just find that stuff funny.
Well, I happen to agree a bit with what you're saying. I actually, I remember you were making fun of like the whole like pick the person with the rich and powerful parents. I actually would not pick that person. I thought like maybe
Yeah,
it would make sense to network with this person, but
yeah,
I find when I try, I can't even like do it very well.
no,
It's not really,
no,
it doesn't lead to many interest. Like I don't know how to explain. Uh, I just find like it's hard to connect with these kinds of people first of all, and then
Yeah.
I found that um, like even if like you're in touch with people that have a lot of money or whatever, like they still have to. There's all kinds of problems that happen if like it's not like the money they're just going to use the money to help you. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way. I mean,
Yeah.
and you have to align incentives somehow, and like that doesn't really happen.
Yes.
There's no real connection. Is that
Yes,
is
totally.
that's my experience.
Is
Um,
there a lot? Do you do a lot of networking and have like in all the things that you do? Do you find yourself networking, or did you never really bother?
I've tried it in a lot of ways, actually. I have some hilarious stories of sorts. I make quite some careless mistakes, and the positive side of that is that it makes me do really funny things on occasion. An accident. Uh,
Yeah.
like once I held this influencer's like purse on the red carpet, and that was my picture on like the red carpet. I was trying to meet people with this like kind of famous influencer. uh I mean, that whole game seemed really ridiculous to me, and then I ended up getting screwed over in some weird way.
Oh wow.
But
What
I like,
happened? How did you get screwed over?
well, and this is kind of part of my whole learning experience with that, was that basically that person reneged on their deal with me. They promised to do
Oh.
all these things, and like one was to get me to collaborate with this guy who was kind of like the James Bond, the influencer scene. I forget what his name was, but
Yeah.
his stuff looks amazing. That didn't happen. She was supposed to get the blue tick for Instagram. That didn't happen either. She's supposed to like help me network another event. That didn't happen. She
Right. Yeah.
actually, you know what happened was she's supposed to raise money for my charity, and then she starts her own charity, and then she tries to get me to donate to that, and I'm like, wait, I paid you to raise money for my charity. And then she's like, "Oh, why am I even doing this anymore? Our term's over." And I'm like,
Wow.
"What?" Like, yeah. And then basically she
Wow.
stole from me. So there's
Wow.
that too.
Okay.
It's like not the best
Jeez.
experience. And she was,
No.
yeah. I've actually had really weird experiences with people who seem like they're really famous or have money. It's been really polarizing. They're either like, in my experience, really nice or really not nice.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's the kind of risk if you adopt that kind of value of like, okay, I'm this person will help me, and they're obviously thinking the same. If they're that kind of person,
Hmm?
kind of enter that world. You kind of enter that world where everyone is individualist, right? And that, yeah, that can go pretty badly.
Uh, well, if they are all individualist, I mean, I personally just basically decided, okay, well, I need to find the people that whose
Yeah.
values actually align. It has to
Yeah.
start there.
Exactly.
It's kind of like friendship. If the friendship's
Yeah.
real,
Yeah.
then it's okay.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think that's the attitude I took in comedy is like, don't try and be friends with anyone you wouldn't just be friends with. Like, don't try and network in a way that goes against your normal instincts of who is just a friend who, like, will end up helping you out and you'll help them out, but you don't need to make that the priority because you just become friends with people and everything that happens, it just happens.
yeah, I'm pretty much on your page of things. I mean, you can like hire people for specific reasons or something, but
Right, yeah.
that kind of thing. It's a little tricky. So have you had a lot of experience networking? Oh yeah, you went to that event. I know that. What's your experience been like? Do you have any funny stories?
Uh, Not really. I'm not much of a networker in general. I don't really. Yeah. So my motto is just make friends with people and never make it about some kind of ulterior motive or like something that you really want. I know people who are like, it's really cringe when there's someone who is clearly just trying to talk to you because you have some status and they don't really want to be friends with you. They just want to kind of be seen talking to you or want to have that like kind of connection. Yeah, it's very odd because yeah, I'm at the level where there are people who I meet people like that and they'll be like, oh, I You're just trying to network, and it's just cringe to see that, and I never want to be on that side.
Yeah, it's not the best look ultimately. There's like some people kind
Yeah.
of pull it off.
Yeah,
Actually this
exactly.
lady pulled it off. She pulled it off
Yeah.
for sure. Like it was so obvious what she was doing. It's so obvious what some other people are doing. And it sort of
Yeah.
works for them actually. That's the funny
Yeah.
thing. That's what I find.
Charm is such a resource.
Yeah, I guess you could call it that or whatever it is. It's like almost inspiring in a way just because it's like, oh, you don't have to be um it's just like it's inspiring in the sense that um I don't believe in it, but just
Yeah.
that like it just shows that so much perseverance even when like there are
Yeah.
forces against you can actually like work in various ways. Like, oh, there's even people who I mean, I prefer it not to be this way. I still think these people will eventually crash. Is my personal thoughts, but
That's what I always tell myself to sleep
yeah.
better at night. These people will crash.
Oh, speaking of which, are you following the latest scandal with this Robbie J. Jew thing?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, but I mean, it's such a headache following it, especially after people talk who are not into poker talk about it on social media. I'm just like, this is really mind numbing.
Oh, okay. So you're not interested in it anymore. You're just huh?
Vaguely, I do actually want to see what happens, but at this point, there's so many opinions on it. I have no idea anymore.
Okay. I think there's an outrageously high chance that she's cheating, and it just looks to me like this is one of these situations where
Yeah.
my personal suspicion is that this lady, I mean, she actually seems like a nice lady. If you look on her Instagram, she seems like a nice
Yeah.
person. But
Yeah.
she like really it's clear that she doesn't care too much about stating the truth. I mean,
Yeah.
that much is clear, and that's like one of those things, in my opinion, that like falls like a house of cards.
Right.
But anyway,
Yeah,
are
no,
there?
this is interesting. Yeah, interesting thing to have happened either way. No matter what, it's just such a weird thing to see like on stream and be like, wow, that happened.
No kidding. It's like getting crazier and crazier. Um, I'm into it.
Yeah.
I realized a few things, but it'll be very interesting to see. I mean, I think there's just like no way there's not something going on here, but who knows? Who knows?
Is it quite? What are the opinions among like people very polar? Because it feels like among the poker community, it's very polarized, and yeah, I don't really have that many friends who are that into poker. I have a few who are a bit into poker, but no like people in the like who play a lot and are very invested in this.
It seems like everyone's mostly on the side of cheating. What I don't understand
Yeah,
is there's a lot of people who are saying like 80% or so, but she's done some like incredibly damning things, such as say she doesn't know this person with 100 followers and they're both following each other and then they had
oh
dinner
yeah,
the previous day and he's like in the perfect position to like see the whole cards uh,
right, yeah.
and like somehow this guy
Okay,
stole money off her stack. Like just a bunch of crazy
that was
things.
weird. That whole thing is so weird. He just came in and stole money off her stack.
Yeah. Um. So, are you involved much in the poker world? I know that there was a You said in one of your stand-up comedies that you lost $100,000 in one day. I mean, it sounds
Yeah,
like
I used to play much higher stakes than I do now. Yeah, I don't play anywhere near as high stakes as I used to. That's the most I've lost in the day. Because I used to play. Yes, I'm not really involved in the poker world as such. I still play. Yeah, I play. I used to play high stakes triple draw, and that's where I lost
really.
100K. Yeah,
I would have never guessed. I didn't know you were a triple draw
yeah.
player.
I love triple draw. I used to play. Yeah, I used to play as high as. I just kept running up. I was up like 500K in triple draw in like a few months, and
No
then
way.
lost quite a lot of it back. But that was when that was like 10 years ago now. That was crazy. I don't see that kind of money anymore these days.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I imagined No Limit Hold'em. The
Oh,
triple draw.
I hate Hold'em. I absolutely hate it.
Oh, it's so
I
funny.
think like a few years into when I was after I quit uni, I started learning all the games, and I love all the games, all the mixed games, and I mainly play 5-card Plo, 6-card Plo, and triple draw at the moment, and just normal Plo.
Okay. It sounds like you like a lot of like where there's a lot of cards. Is that what you like about it, or?
Yeah, yeah. There's not enough cards in Hold'em. You just don't make anything. I hate not making anything. It's so boring.
Oh, that's a fair point. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It can be boring as shit. I just
Yeah.
try to think of all the ways to bluff. Is what I do. I just like,
Fun.
how do I win this pot? Okay,
Yeah.
well, I could overbet the river.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna double float. I'm gonna check raise whatever, double float and shove the river to a bet. That kind of vibe. I used to play like that when I played Hold'em. And it did not work.
If you do it every once in a while, it can be good.
Yeah,
If
you
pick
do.
the right spots.
Yeah. When it pulls off. Oh yeah, that feels great.
I don't know if I've tried the check raise double float, but I tried some like, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. I was just making shit up, but yeah. I used to double float a lot in heads up Plo. I used to double float like all the time and shove river.
You mean when they check to you, right?
Yeah. Sometimes over shove. You know, I watch that. What is the hand between Tom Dwan and who is it? Marcello, is it? Do you remember the hand when they played like high? Is it the what was the like the Dur challenge on the video one? Well, I can't remember what the show was, but he played 4 different people. For
That was one of them.
And
Oh no,
no,
maybe
not
that was
the
live
online.
one. Excuse me.
Yeah. This was a TV show called. This was not the famous. You and it was a different. It was like a live show, and it was like he played like 500 hands versus each of these people, and one of them is like the guy double floated with King 9 high, on just kind of, and then shoved the river for like 100k. It was only 20k more on an 80k bet on the river. Tom Dwan has King Queen high and just mucks it, and he just shows. And I was like, what the? Because if Tom had just shoved the river, it would have got through, obviously, because he can't call it. But he shoves like 20k more in a 400k pot, and it just gets through after double floating 2 like pot bets. I was like, I used to try and do shit like that.
It can be good against like the right opponent. There's a couple people that you just have to find the right person, kind of. Or know that they're gonna like give up a lot on the river or whatever.
Yeah,
some
exactly.
spots.
And no, sometimes it pulls off, and you're like, okay, I judged that well.
Well, it's really funny when it works. It's it's exciting when that kind of stuff works. I haven't I don't try it as much as I feel like there's that fine line between doing it like 25% of the time and doing it like 5 to 10% of the time or something.
Yeah.
Crazy plays. It's a little bit tough to manage exactly. But if you do like some really crazy plays every once in a while, it works really well.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes you just know they have hair as well. That's the thing. Sometimes you just find an inconsistency in what they do. Like, okay, they're just never playing the nuts this way, and you're just like, okay, I could shove for like 10% more pot and get a fold.
Have you been able to do that much?
In Plo, like sometimes, yeah. In Plo, like some people are so. I'm only playing like 50 cent, a dollar, 1 cent, well, $1, $2 these days, and like in heads up, people will just like expose their kind of like they only play the nuts this way, they only have X if they do this, and sometimes you'll be like, okay, do they just have air here because they never would have checked the nuts in that way or something like. So occasionally you do just go, okay, I'm shipping here because they just can't have it.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe you are good at reading people at poker because you have to read the crowd a little bit to see if they're like enjoying your jokes. I would presume there's some kind of crossover there.
Yeah, definitely. Both are ultimately you do have to spend a lot of time thinking how other people think and how other people and figure that out. Like I think that's a big crossover. And I play a lot of social deduction games. I don't know if you play many of those, like games where people lie, basically.
Like what? There's one game that I'm thinking of called Wolf, but I know it looks like
Werewolf,
you played some other stuff I don't really know.
I
No
played
Rolls.
one called Blood on the Clock. Yeah, with No Roads Barred, which is a YouTube channel. They play a game called Blood on the Clock Tower, which is basically Werewolf Mafia, Among Us, all those kind of games, but
Oh.
better.
Oh, better.
It's better. It's better.
Really?
Yeah, it's so good. It's such a good game. Yeah, I think poker players will really enjoy it. I think poker players should. I'd love to introduce poker players to this game. It's so good.
Maybe you should. I'm tempted to pitch it to them myself because they loved Werewolf. I thought Werewolf was a lot of fun.
Werewolf is great, and then Blood on the Clock Tower is basically advanced Werewolf, where they kind of fixed the problems of Werewolf mostly.
Okay, I didn't know. I didn't know there was like content for these kinds of things, for these kinds of games.
Oh yeah. There's a big community of people who watch this kind of thing, and actually, funnily, we were talking about getting recognized. The 2 times I've been recognized in the street, like recently, in the last 2 weeks, is not for comedy, but for being on No Roads Barred, the YouTube channel.
No way.
Which is so weird. Yeah, it's such a specific. I guess it's such a specific community of people who watch these things, and they get really into the content they watch. They're willing to spend a lot on like donating to these like patrons and Kickstarters and stuff. They're really into it. And someone just stopped me in the street and just started shouting No Rolls Barred at me, and I was like, well, okay. And I was at a comedy festival as well, and I'd not been recognized by anyone for comedy. I've only been recognized for No Rolls Barred.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I had no idea. I guess you just never know like what's out there. So are you like a top No Rolls Barred player? Are you really when you play? Do you make like make like confident and aggressive moves, or I don't know how it works.
I'm not that good at the game actually. So the game's called Blood on the Clock Tower, and I'm not that good at it. No Rolls Barred is the YouTube channel. Don't worry. Blood on the Clock Tower. I'm all right at it. I'm probably better. I'm really not good at being evil in these games, where you have to like deceive and just lie constantly. I'm not very good at being evil. I think it's really hard to be evil, and some people are amazing at it, and I just can't. I can't do it. It's like basically imagine even like you have a bad hand for 2 hours and you have to constantly bluff it repeatedly. It's basically
It doesn't sound like a great situation to just like have to lie over and over and over.
Yeah, it is quite a cool game though, because there are ways that make it easier for evil players compared to other games. But yeah, it's quite a cool game actually, being evil. Once you've done it enough, I think there are tricks that you can pull, and yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Wait, are you saying you know the evil tricks, but you're just not very good at being evil?
Yeah, socially, I guess like a lot of being evil is to try and both produce a convincing world to the good players that makes sense. So you have to really like just know the game quite well enough to kind of be able to do that on the fly, but also socially behave that way. And I probably the social part is one which I just never feel quite like I'm doing it, like I'm playing exactly how I would play if I was good. It's really hard to balance. It's basically that. It's really hard to balance like and play exactly how you would play if you were good.
Right. Well, it sounds like I don't know. It sounds like these evil players are a little bit suspicious. Though I don't know how it works. I don't know if they're players who are really good at being evil, but also just good people as well. I don't know.
Yeah. Some people are amazing either way. Like there's some players I've played against who are just unreadable, and they just know the game so well that either way it's really hard to figure out through mechanical information or social reads to be like they're just like really good at it.
But do you have to be evil to be really good at this game, or that's just like a number of people are really good and they're like pure evil? It just feels like
there's a 30% chance that you get given you're on the evil team at the beginning of each game. So ideally you'd be good, be both good at being good. So yeah, your alignment. So the good team and the evil team are set at the start. So like,
Oh,
yeah, I don't know if you played Among Us or anything like that, where
no.
so yeah, it's like 10. Yeah, it's like Werewolf, where 2 or 3 people are given evil at the start, and they just have to fool everyone
Oh, okay.
and survive execution, basically. Like the town, like in Werewolf, the town will vote for executions, and your job is to try and survive execution, and that will mean that you're trying to pin it onto other good players instead. And for good, it's interesting. But for good, it's like basically you're doing like a team logic puzzle to try and work out what's going on. But there are 3 people who are trying to mess with that logic puzzle by throwing in like different logic puzzle information, basically.
Oh, okay. I think I understand. Okay, that does sound
Yeah.
like fun. Well, hopefully I get a chance to play it. I'll pitch it if I'm in the
Yeah.
situation where they're suggesting Wolf. We'll see if
Yeah.
this game catches.
Sick.
Yeah.
It's
So
a
tell
sick
me
game.
more. Okay. So tell me more about like how it sounds like you're fairly, how do I say, you're fairly passionate about making some sort of social impact as well. You're not doing like 100% one or the 100%
No.
the other. It doesn't seem like it's super feasible to do it that way. Also, just because, yeah, I mean, I would think things that are pure entertainment and neutral also help raise awareness for
Yeah.
these other things that they've got the hidden social message or that sort of thing.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but it sounds like you're not like super like it's not like correct me if I'm wrong. Um, it sounds like you like to bring some awareness to things like racism and stuff, but you don't make it like a super central point. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so, and definitely not now. I did one show which was purely about racism, so, and I
Oh,
thought, you know what,
okay.
that was quite an interesting kind of mini challenge, I guess, to be like, I'm doing a whole hour show based around racism, and how could I explore it in ways that are not like super dull as well, like, and since then I want to go away from that. Actually, I found it quite tough because ultimately, like, there'll be audiences who are really on board with what you're doing, and there are lots of audiences who are like, we don't have the same values, or we just aren't interested in
One
this.
way of
So
putting it.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
very diplomatic way. Especially when you gig around the country in the UK, you reach completely different political views and just different. But it's also not even political views necessarily. It's just what they know about and
Oh yeah.
what. Yeah, I did shows about racism in places which are like 98% white British, and it's just a very different vibe to doing it in a city which is like more diverse, like London, and people kind of have just seeing like diversity more on the street, and it's just completely different vibe. And it's not like all these people in those audiences were racist, but they just were not engaging it in the same way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would think it would be pretty bold to do it in a 98% white one, but I don't know. I don't know. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any other material at the time that I was doing, so I was just like, okay, we're gonna see how this goes. And yeah, I realize it's not this kind of material will only play to a certain age demographic, city demographic. It's like, yeah,
so
which
do
is
you do?
fine, I think.
Go ahead.
No, you got, yeah.
My question was, do you kind of like, do you see a demographic and do you like decide, okay, I think these kinds of jokes will sort of land with this demographic? Kind of like in poker where you think, okay, this
Yeah.
this guy looks
Yeah.
like he's not going to make too many moves. I'm going to like bluff him a lot
Yeah,
or
yeah. Exploitative play. Yeah, I play purely exploitative play. Yeah. Yes, I think so, but yeah, generally, yeah, I will have a good gauge of what will go down well. It doesn't necessarily mean I don't do it. I just kind of just still do it anyway and be like, yeah, that was obviously not going to go well.
Oh, okay. So it sounds more like something that it's hard to master exactly how that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
but yeah, exactly. I'd have to kind of have more material that I've rehearsed and been doing recently for me to change that much. Like, I mean, to adapt that much, because ultimately I can't be bothered to like remember so many different sets of material and just be like, I'm gonna bring that one out. I just kind of rock up to a gig with most of what knowing most of what I'll say, and if it doesn't go well, I kind of just will disrespect the audience instead. I'll just be like, well, that audience was never gonna like it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm not one. I don't really want to be a gigging comedian, which is a thing which is comedians. I don't want to be one who makes most of my money and spends a lot of my time gigging, which a lot of comedians do want to do that. But actually, I find it a very antisocial lifestyle. So I'm generally trying to do more writing work, TV work, radio work, all that kind of stuff, and have like more work in the day, and not give up several evenings a week to gigging in these kind of places. And I know a lot of comedians, they make that their bread and butter, but I'm definitely not aiming for that.
Oh, okay. Because you want to have your evenings free to go out and do that sort
to
of
see
thing.
friends. Yeah, it's like to make money from just purely gigging, you're gonna have to give up both your Friday and Saturday nights, like most weekends. Most weekends, and if that some comedians, that's their only real way of doing it, because they don't have as much TV and radio work, and also other bits of random work that you can get. The great thing about comedy is you can transition into so many different creative spheres. People really respect comedians in this country, in this industry, like in terms of like producers of TV shows. They really respect comedians to be able to write for other genres like drama and stuff.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of comedians will just be able to like transition into other spheres like that quite easily.
Oh, I had no idea. I mean, that does make sense. I can see how that. Huh?
I presented a kids TV show a couple years ago as well, and that was just off the back of being a comedian. Like I'd never done kids presenting, but they were like, okay, well, I've been on stage before, I've been on TV before and stuff, so they're like, yeah, you could probably do it. Like ultimately, comedians have done a lot of performing, and they respect that. So I just presented a kids TV show.
It's the one where you teach kids about science, right?
Yeah. So they just auditioned me for that, and I got it, and they just gave me scripts. I just read them, and it was quite fun to do.
Is there like a specific reason why you did that one, or it just seemed like a good opportunity, or did you want to help the kids, or?
No specific reason. I'll probably say yes to most things like that, because they are reasonably well paid. It's like 10 days work for 10 grand. It's like decent, like for in terms of like a day rate, you get paid £1,000 a day. Like it's not much work, and you don't really get opportunities like that come up all the time. It's rare. It's rare. I'm not at a level where like I'll get loads of offers similar to that.
Oh, okay. I thought it was cute. I thought.
Thanks.
Yeah, I personally believe that one of the biggest ways to create impact is by teaching kids in some kind of way. There's more to that, but it was cute.
Yeah.
Kind of random. I've seen you been on a ton of shows. You've been on you had your own episode on Doctor Who Redacted. I don't know many of these shows.
That's just a Doctor Who audio series. Again, that's comedy drama, and I've never written for Doctor Who. I've never written comedy drama actually before I did that, and they were just like, yeah, okay, we think you're a good writer. Come write an episode of this.
All right, and so has writing been that easy of a transition for you from comedy, or?
Yeah, I find writing scripted stuff quite natural. I watched a lot of TV growing up. I watched a lot of like drama and comedy, all sorts. So I find it quite natural to write scripts. I think I can kind of imagine the scenes and dialogue a lot.
Who would have thought? I would have just thought like writing scripts for TV would be one of these things you just have to work really hard for. You're like,
I think you do, but
cool. I guess writing scripts for drama was no problem. Who would have thought?
Yeah, it's actually not too hard. at all. Yeah, quite fun, quite fun. You're basically like, have you ever watched a TV show and kind of like, might imagine scenes of it in your head? It's kind of like that. I don't know if
Well,
you've ever done that.
I think I know what you mean. Like in my mind, it turns out that all the that every there's only I believe 16 to I forget. There's a book that goes into all the different routes that a movie or whatever can
Oh,
the
yeah,
emotional routes that they can have, right?
yeah,
So a lot of them do follow the same format. So perhaps that's what you're alluding to, and you can like foresee roughly what the emotional journey will look like on the whole.
right. Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, that was my guess at what you were talking about. I'm not exactly a drama writer. I'm just
No,
like
fair.
kind of I'm trying to figure these things out.
Yeah.
Did poker? How did poker prepare you for comedy and for doing all these things? I could think. Yeah, I'll let you talk. Actually.
I think it's actually, yeah, I wrote an article about this ages ago, actually. I think there is a lot of crossover because it is quite individual. It's quite an individual thing to do. Like, you're purely on your own with both poker and comedy for at least large parts of it. And you kind of have to be your own boss, make your own decisions, kind of figure out a lot of things by yourself. You have to teach yourself as well. There are not many mentors in comedy. There are a few here and there, and people definitely get mentors like loosely or formally. But yeah, you just kind of have to approach it from a kind of, yeah, the same kind of. I think it helped a lot having taught kind of like self-taught poker, and kind of been my own boss at poker and just kind of decided what my game plan was and stuff like that. To kind of go into comedy and go, okay, how do I approach this? What is my plan? What's the goal and stuff like that. So I think that definitely helped a lot. It's like, yeah, they're very similar in terms of how much risk there is as well. Like in terms of like risk in the short term, where you're on stage, you could bomb. Like you could completely bomb. There could be silence for 10 minutes. That element, I think I think having done poker, I was like, I know what loss feels like. I know what it's like to be like, oh, I've just lost today. I think that helped a lot to be like, okay, well, I just bombed today. My gig just went poorly, but ultimately there's gonna be more gigs. There's gonna be more gigs, and ultimately, what does that mean? For 10 minutes, I was unfunny and people didn't like me. Yeah, okay, fine. That's like saying, oh, okay, well, I lost a few buy-ins that session. It's like the same mentality goes for both those things. I think a lot of comedians are not used to that kind of variance and that kind of like loss. They're still very loss averse in that way.
It's interesting. So it sounds like because you know what pain feels like, it gives you an edge.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you just kind of know what. Yeah, I think some people get really distraught after a bad gig, and they're just like, I'm
Oh,
quitting comedy forever. Especially when
oh,
starting out. And I've definitely felt that when I was starting out. I was like, it's like that thing in poker where it's like losing feels 2.5 times worse than winning. The same as in comedy. Like bombing, doing a bad gig just feels horrible.
oh. Okay. I can kind of imagine that. I've embarrassed myself a couple times.
Yeah.
Maybe it qualifies. Oh,
Yeah.
I had a question. Oh, yeah, yeah. So, but I imagine that the success for comedy, you have to be a much higher percent than you do have to be in poker, because in poker, if you can beat like a $400 buy-in or $500 buy-in or $1,000 buy-in, you can make pretty good money. Especially online, you can make like 250,000 a year or something.
Yeah.
But I think that you can't really make good money in comedy unless you're like the top, what, like 3% or something, or how does that work?
Less, I'd say, probably top point something percent, probably. I think, yeah, I don't make that much from comedy. Like, yeah, it's ultimately you do have to be quite big to make like really those kind of numbers.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that's the part that's one of the things that's good about poker is that
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you don't have to be, the top. I mean, to beat 510 online, you actually have to be pretty damn good. I
At this
mean, if
point,
you,
yeah. At this
yeah.
stage, yeah.
I mean, even back in the day, it
Yeah.
would be like something like. I mean, that might be top 1% to be honest. It's not very easy to
Yeah.
beat 510 online.
No, no. Not at all. This was why I never played Hold'em. I played all these weird games.
Well, that was kind of smart, actually. If you can,
Yeah.
it's easier to crush a niche market than it is to crush like
Yeah.
the big
Triple
one.
Draw, there was points where there was just so many people, so many bad players would sit down. Back when this was when Full Tilt, but just before Full Tilt went down forever. The Triple Draw games on Full Tilt were amazing. Like people would just sit down in a heads up, lose like 4k out, 100, 200, just leave like just misplaying every hand, and you can have such a big edge in that game. Heads up, Triple Draw. It's like amazing
Really?
how big the edge can be. Yeah.
That's so funny. I would have never imagined. I mean, when I was playing, it was quite competitive. I never really like grinded total donks and triple
Yeah.
draw too much, but who would
Yeah.
have thought that's actually kind of funny?
It was great. Yeah. It was only really one or two players completely destroyed me, but I could beat most players. Eventually, I got too big headed and took on some players who were just like better than me.
Yeah, well, it's like part of the learning curve in some kind of way, I
Yeah.
think.
Part of being in your early 20s, just having the massive downswings of your life.
I want to talk a little bit about this your dating experience, your
Oh yeah.
experience with online dating. Also, that was an entertaining episode for me. I've had a very interesting dating experience myself, but it sounds like you have as well. You had actually almost like a dream experience. It sounded like
Oh, which one?
the one. Well, you have multiple dream experiences.
Oh no, I just yeah.
I was thinking of the
Oh, you
one
mean
where
talk?
you were talking about how there's this ridiculous show where people were falling in love with each other. We're supposed to
Oh,
fall
Love
in
Is
love with each
Blind.
other. Yes, and the words they were saying obviously were not illustrating that, but ironically, you and your I don't
My
know if it was
girlfriend now, yeah.
you're still with her. Okay.
Yeah, we've been together 2.5 years now.
Oh, that's a major accomplishment these days.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the pandemic actually helped a lot with that because it just kind of. Dating, I think, is really hard in London in general because I think people are very time poor in London and it's really hard to schedule stuff like through online dating and you just never really get the momentum in online dating with people to like see each other enough. And yeah, I think like I really didn't have that nicer time of doing online dating before the pandemic. But then the pandemic happened, and I got quite lucky. I met someone who I'm very compatible with, and we just had all the time to just kind of get to know each other, and that was quite nice to just not have really the distractions of like all the other stuff.
Uh, I don't. I think a lot of people did not have a whole lot of fun online
Yeah,
dating,
yeah,
unless yeah. There's quite a bit. There's been quite a lot of studies with that one, but it's
yeah,
sweet that you were able to find someone you're connected with enough to like talk for 6 hours a day.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It was great timing, really, because the first 10 weeks of lockdown were just very novel because I was mainly having dates with my partner. Like I was just mainly talking to my partner and getting to know her. So like I didn't really feel what other people were feeling in the first 10 weeks of like being stuck at home.
oh, okay. Uh, well, I'm happy for you.
Thanks. That
I would
sounds
have
so
thought.
sincere.
No, I am. I what was I gonna say?
Are
I
you seeing anyone? Are you single?
uh You know how on Facebook there used to be an option to saying it's complicated for
Oh
using
yeah,
a
yeah,
list?
yeah,
I think that's a fair way to put it.
yeah,
Dating's really complicated for me because I'm traveling a lot.
Yes.
I find that really complicates things, and things have become kind of strange lately, especially with online dating and the whole market. I would have thought you would have taken a lot of shots at the whole online dating situation, just because it is kind of ridiculous, frankly. It just doesn't really work at all. It actually, the irony is that it does the opposite of work. Is the funny thing.
Right. Well, explain that. What do you think is the big negative effect of it?
Well, there's something in psychology called something like I think it's called decision the something like the decision paradox or now
Oh, yeah.
it's basically where now that you have so many options you can't really decide. It becomes harder to decide.
That's true. Yeah, that's very
And
true.
it also seems like another option's right around the corner. And so and not only that, but another thing that's happened is it's made it seem that, well, related to the whole another option's right around the corner, it there it looks like really attractive options are super available,
Yeah.
and it seems like that's the norm if done a certain way. This is what Instagram has done and what online dating has done, but actually it's a bit of a facade, and it's really like
Right.
these companies trying to like basically give you gratification in quicker time and get your
Yeah.
hopes up kind of thing and kind of milk you in the long run. It depends on who it's for, actually. If it's the
Yeah.
strategy they use for men and women is different. But basically, it makes everyone's standards rise, and it also makes
Right.
it
Yeah.
harder for people to choose.
Yeah.
And it makes online dating an absolute pain in the ass for most people.
That sounds pretty spot on. Yeah. That sounds
Yeah,
pretty spot on.
yeah. And that's. I also think I found it funny that you said dating's really tough in London. I would think. I mean, it's kind of the same idea, right? To a
Yeah.
degree, like there's a ton of people in London. You would think
Yeah.
like, oh, this would make it
Yeah.
easier to meet someone, but
Yeah. Yeah. There's like 6 million people, 10 million people in the area. But yeah,
yeah,
no, it's really, yeah, it definitely was just not at all appealing to me going on these dates with people, and you'd spend like, because of like transport, you'd spend like half an hour to an hour get there. You'd have like conversation for an hour, and then after that you just go home. You wouldn't really feel the need to go meet them again, but who knows? Maybe the second date would have been better. Who knows? But yeah,
yeah, that part. I mean, when we put it like that, it doesn't sound ideal. Uh, but yeah, I thought it was a hilarious. Yeah, I just thought it was like a treasure trove of jokes to be made. But what do I know?
yeah, yeah,
That's
totally. I kind of want to expand that on kind of dating and stuff more in the future. Although we'll see, because that was a half-hour episode. I assume it's the half-hour episode that you listened to, and potentially there's a full show all about dating. Depends whether I want to go down that avenue or go down a different theme and do something different. Who knows?
Oh, okay. Do you have any like explicit plans for the future with poker at all? With comedy, do you have any things you want to talk about? Other projects that you've got coming up?
Nothing in the pipeline at the moment. I'm kind of, after doing my radio series, I kind of was not rushing to come up with another project. The little things in the pipeline, but they just don't really materialize quickly enough in the UK when you're pitching for like radio and TV. It's quite a laborious process, and ultimately it could take years to get a project off the ground, and that is quite frustrating to me. And I wish I kind of just I had my own self-sustaining kind of content online, like, which I could just put out like every week or so, every few days, and have a Patreon and do stuff like that. So maybe I'll look into finally starting something like that, but who knows?
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't mean explicit projects necessarily, but like rough plans for the future.
Rough plans. I think I don't know, actually. Don't know. I think I'm just focusing a bit on poker, trying to get back into it more and more.
Oh, okay.
Play enough to like fund everything else and not worry. The great thing about poker, it gives me the option to say no to a lot of things that pay money but are not appealing. Like gigs where you have to travel 2 hours on the train and you do a gig to the audience I described earlier who hate my comedy, but
Oh,
ultimately they do pay all right. Anyway, stuff like that.
maybe it works doing both a little bit. Not sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I always used to struggle with that. I always used to struggle and balance both. I always had a thing where if I have like a bad day at poker, I just wouldn't be able to like get into the mindset of comedy. Or even if I had a really good day at poker, it would just really hard to like care about comedy and vice versa. But I'm working on ways to balance the two. They're quite different parts of your brain, I think. So that part is a challenge.
I guess I could see how that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, well, I know that doing improv is very different
Yeah.
from poker in many ways. I like purposely tried to make jokes just to keep myself. I mean, I had the issue of being too logical a lot of the time, and I had to do I had to do some improv, and it like actually shook things up a little.
That's good. That's good. I think I really do recommend improv to everyone. Like, I think it's nowadays there are a lot of improv schools in the UK. Even there weren't that many before, but they've kind of brought them over from the US to kind of, and like people who are like in the same. I did a class once, and like, most people there were like in the same kind of dull like kind of finance accountancy kind of jobs, and they just loved the escape. They just loved doing something so different, and like the idea of doing improv was just so magical to them because their lives were mostly just doing accounting or whatever.
It is definitely, let's throw a shout out to improv because it is really like I took a lot of routes towards self improvement myself, and
Yeah,
improv was probably one of the ones that was the biggest positive impact
that's interesting.
that I could think of. It wasn't very expensive. It was like I did one that was
Yeah,
like $30 a session or something,
yeah.
and I learned a lot. I learned how to make. You can actually get better at puns. I didn't know that you can
Yeah, the
get
games that you could play.
better
Yeah,
fundamentals. And
there we go.
well, not quite your quality, but whatever. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it's all
it's
good.
also like a good experiment in this idea of like working together and that kind of thing. So
Yes,
it is really a
yes,
good route for self improvement. Well, we don't have too much more time here. I wanted to
sure.
also talk briefly. Well, we can talk about whatever you want. I want. There was one comment I liked in one of your skits. Is that you said that you believe there's someone out there for everyone, and there's hope for everyone to find someone that really loves them, and that kind of thing. I thought that was sweet. I didn't. It's just sweet that you were such a romantic.
Yeah, I am ultimately, even though I kind of hate humanity, I'm still sort of an optimist about all people in a way. Not really, because I ultimately think humanity is over, but I'm still sort of an optimist about that kind of thing. That like ultimately people have the potential to be loved, to love, and that's what everyone kind of should aim for. And that's what a lot of people lack, really, and that's why they behave in certain ways. I always do pin it down to they just want to be loved, and they can't be because of all these societal things or things they've been taught that are wrong, or like various different things. But ultimately, a lot of people, and that I was talking about the incel movement and stuff like that, and ultimately, I think people do. I could just because I think all humans have the capacity for love and to be loved, and I think that's something that they should strive for more than everything that they're doing.
Uh, a couple of questions.
Yes, yes.
Well, first of all, is this a skit in some kind of future? Or is this a skit or two, a half a skit, or
No,
a
I was
gig?
just speaking from the heart.
Oh, okay. Um, I I am kind of similar in that I'm idealistic and I think that there's good in everyone and it's taught actually in spirituality that there
Yes,
is and I'm hopeful that there's the true love wins in the end. It doesn't
yes.
look very it doesn't look very good. It
No,
doesn't look
no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. But especially because these days there's a very big gap between the guys that are there's typically a big gap between the guys who are successful and the guys
Yeah.
who are not. So I actually feel sorry for them because, or the
Yeah.
guys who feel like they have no hope because, I mean,
Yeah.
I'll reveal something is that I was a virgin until 20 years old. I was a bit behind the
Yeah.
curve myself, and I wasn't getting a whole lot of action. I had my heart broken
Yeah.
when I was like 22, and I was like, all right, I got to work
Yeah.
on this. And so, like, I've seen a bit of that kind of pain. Um, And I hope somehow there's some kind of solution because it kind of looks like the shift between men and women is getting wider and wider.
Right. Yeah.
And it does kind of seem like we're all screwed as well.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it does seem that. But then again, like, no, it does seem that. I was gonna say like a caveat to that, but yeah, there's a lot of problem with society, and it. Well, I guess like some of it is what you see on social media. Maybe that isn't actually reflective of what is going on across the board. And that's maybe the caveat, is that actually maybe our perceptions of it are not as bad. Maybe it's not as bad as things seem.
Maybe
But-
they're worse.
Maybe they're worse. Maybe they are much worse. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think they're pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard all sorts of things, so who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a big part of it's part of like the tension before the twist. Maybe that's what.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Must be. We're, if that's coming, you know.
Well, that's the big if. Any other thoughts before you have to go? Any more conjectures about humanity being doomed you'd like to share, or positive sentiments for the viewers? Or
I really like when you talk about self-improvement, because I think that's a big thing for me, self-improvement and the kind of self-awareness that comes with it, and really questioning like your own flaws, your own values, everything, all that kind of stuff. And that's something I guess I'd pass on as to the viewers, is that, yeah, adopt that vibe of like kind of constantly. I've always thought as long as you're self-improving, that gives you a reason to keep going. Like that's the main thing you should focus on. And I think that will probably help all the people out there who are, you know, kind of stuck. It's just like, it's all about self-improvement, really.
okay, I like that idea. Is there anything specific within that other people can take from that and say, okay, I'm going to improve myself in this kind of way, or anything actually that was a way that you managed to improve yourself? I mean, how do I explain this?
I think the biggest thing is accepting failure, and failure within yourself, and also like external failure, but being able to go, actually, I'm bad at this, I'm bad at this, and actually being honest with yourself, because I think people are very averse to actually admitting that and being truthful about that to themselves and to others, but actually being like, okay, this is a thing that I actually do need to really improve on, and identifying them one by one. I think that was probably like, yeah, where I benefited. I think people just don't really think that about themselves, and are just so against thinking that, because we're taught like you're not allowed to fail, you're not allowed to be bad at these things.
Yeah,
That's still
well,
quite general, but that's something that I often think.
okay, so self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let's hope people take that to heart. And yeah, it's Faye, you got any last words before we cut it off?
Just be nice to other people on a micro level. That's all you can do. That's my last words to anyone listening.
Okay, guys, kindness, and it's been great having you on here, Ken Chang.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.